Okay, well listen, thank you for coming. We have standing room only here. Somebody suggested we could go out and sit under a tree. I'm not sure that we have a whole lot of volunteers for that this morning, but thank you all for coming, and I'm delighted to have the opportunity to kick off our strategic planning process. Before we get into the new strategic planning process, I wanted to do a few things. I wanted to review some of the communications and feedback, and I wanted to tell you a little bit about what happened with the 2008 strategic plan in the hopes of encouraging you to believe that participation in the process is worthwhile, because we did a great deal of what we intended to do in the last strategic planning period, even though for the first few years we didn't have any money. I also wanted to bring you up to date a little bit on the university strategic planning process, and because we hope to dovetail with that, talk about our own process, have an open discussion with you, and then I need to save some time at the end for a special presentation. So, many of you know that over the last 18 months or so, I have been to 13 basic science and 19 clinical department faculty meetings to present very briefly and to listen. And I heard a number of common themes, and I just thought I'd bring those up to you. Every department is different, every department is unique, but there were some commonalities in what I heard. Questions about pilot and bridge funding programs were prominent, and I think they're going to become more prominent thanks to our legislators and their wisdom in allowing the sequester to happen. But I felt better that we were able to talk about those in those meetings and make you all aware of what programs we have available. Mentoring programs came up in a number of the departments, and even though a number of, even in departments where the chair's feedback has been that the mentoring programs are strong and individual, there was feedback from some of the junior faculty that more intensive mentoring and that mentoring that extended outside of the departmental lines would be desirable. As you know, in October, Sana Liu began as the Vice Dean for Faculty Development and Diversity, and she actually has special expertise in mentoring and has published on it, and she'll be looking at these programs and hoping to develop programs to suit our faculty. There were a number of questions about central core resources, and Mark Chance, our Vice Dean for Research, has organized this spring a retreat of core directors so that we can get everybody coordinated on the same page, the publicity and the availability of cores, the policies unified. So the core directors are going to meet, and we're going to try to work on systematization of our central core resources. Several departments were very interested in commercialization activities, and our activities with the two chief translational officers who began in December 2011 have really accelerated considerably. They have made wonderful contacts with industry and have presented programs for more than 20 faculty so far to members of industry. And out of those presentations grew some very active discussions. And in addition, we have presented to our Council to Advance Human Health the programs of 5 active faculty members. They have, we presented 7. They have recommended funding of 5, and we have initiated that. From 2 of those, the experiments that were done with those funds and/or the very fact that their institution invested in them has catalyzed has catalyzed $800,000 of additional investment. So we think this program is off to a pretty good start, and we'll be working some more on that. And people wanted to know about our portfolio diversification, talking about the Office of Strategic Initiatives that works on foundations, non-NIH federal, and state grants was very important. And also, obviously, the commercialization programs to connect us up with industry. So in 2008, Jim Kazura and Bob Miller led a strategic planning process that was designed to meet this particular goal. You can read it as well as I could. And this was executed through the constitution of 9 task forces with 52 members, input from faculty, staff, and students. We had a website that was pretty regularly updated, and we did surveys of particular faculty. So what did we do? Our goals were to educate our future leaders in medicine and the biomedical sciences, to enhance our reputation of excellence in biomedical research, to serve the community and the broader society, and to align our research excellence with clinical programs. So you have a sheet on the a handout that I think most of you got. I think we had enough copies when you came in the room. That is a very brief summary. Bob Miller left us a beautiful legacy of a table with our goals and with the metrics and with what we expected, and I was able to fill in that table. And this is just some of the things that we could fit on one page. Instead of all the news that's fit to print, it's all the news that fits we print. In the column of education, Western Reserve 2 has been refined. Our short-term results are excellent in terms of USMLE and the match. We understand thoroughly that we need to look over the longer term, because part of the hypothesis was that learner-driven education would result in more lasting commitment to lifelong learning. And our students who started in Western Reserve 2, this spring, the first of them will finish their residencies if they only did 3-year residencies. And we're talking about partnering with the American Board of Internal Medicine to examine the outcomes from these students and other ways in which we can test the initial hypothesis. On the area of graduate education, the task force recommended appointing an associate dean for graduate education and beefing up that office. And indeed, we didn't appoint an associate dean. And Allison Hall was so successful that she got it recruited out to be a deputy director at the National Institute of General Medical Sciences. I suppose that's an endorsement. I'm not happy with the result, but it was an endorsement. And we are now searching for her replacement. In addition, I think the databases that she established there have been a great help to many of the T32 applicants who've who used to have to struggle with the monster tables that were required and now really have a resource to go to. In the area of research, we had 5 topic areas that were recommended for concentration. And I think we've had successes in all of them. In the metabolism area, Henri Brunengraber was able to obtain funding for a national level mouse metabolomics core, which has been extremely successful and has received renewed funding from the NIH. In addition, we appointed a new chief of endocrinology in the Department of Medicine. The Cancer Center has had extraordinary successes. The funding of our first SPORE grant on gastrointestinal cancer, and the recent renewal of the P30 grant, the Comprehensive Cancer Center grant, with a score that puts us among the top 6 comprehensive cancer centers in the whole country, I think testifies to the success of the cancer program. In the cardiovascular realm, we've brought up a wonderful generation of new cardiovascular fellows and junior faculty. Between the Division of Cardiovascular Medicine and the Department of Physiology and Biophysics, we have a training grant in the cardiovascular sciences, and we are moving forward in this realm. In the area of neurosciences, our ophthalmic sciences have outdone themselves. They now stand 5th in the country for NIH funding from the National Eye Institute, which is quite remarkable. And they have one of the most distinguished retina programs in the whole country. This is a strongly integrated program between the clinical side and the research side. We're very proud of that. There have been a number of recruitments in neurosciences and in biomedical engineering relevant to neurosciences, and this is a strong piece of our portfolio. Infection and immunity has always been one of our strengths here. Under Bob Salata, we established an Institute for Immunology and Infectious Diseases. The CFAR, the AIDS Research Program, tuberculosis, our global health program, our Center of Excellence in Malaria, which was funded during the last 5-year period. We really have a great deal of strength in this area. In addition, there's a wonderful program headed by Bob Bonomo at the VA on antibiotic-resistant bacteria, and there are programs in the Department of Biochemistry in this area as well. So we have really, I think, done well in all of these areas. We also wanted to celebrate and reward excellence in the faculty. And we have now established a merit system that is faculty-driven that will drive our raises. In addition, we've paid more attention to putting faculty up for awards. Indeed, over the last 5 years, we've added 2 people to the Institute of Medicine. And we're going to have another discussion of the National Academies a little bit later today. Infrastructure. The support for infrastructure was recommended. Through the CTSA grant and through the Clinical and Translational Science Collaborative, we've built a lot of infrastructure surrounding and supporting clinical and translational research. And we've been able to consolidate some of the infrastructure that we started in the previous 5-year period, including imaging, proteomics, and genomics. We are now in the process of building bioinformatics, and I think we've done well. Community engagement has been one of our stars. In October of 2011, we announced a gift from the Weatherhead family to establish the Weatherhead Institute. This, I hope, in the course of establishing this and in the course of supporting the CTSA, I have seen that there are numerous programs in various departments around here that reach into the community, both at the high school level, at the level of engagement with community agencies, engagement with the public health agencies in town, and with the Cleveland Metropolitan School District. We have done very well. This is actually the largest segment, the fastest growing segment of our research portfolio. And I think you heard a little bit earlier about the alignment of research and clinical programs. I have to admit that as we're launching this new strategic planning initiative, that the current climate is one of uncertainty. Our brethren in Congress have succeeded in tying things up pretty thoroughly here. And as you know, the sequester went into effect on March 1st. The full impact of that and exactly how that is going to play out is not yet clear, but it's going to have a negative impact on the School of Medicine because so much of our budget comes from federal funding. Wall Street hasn't done us any huge favors either. In order to hedge our endowment, the investment committee of the Board of Trustees constructed a program that did not allow for rapid growth of the endowment. And indeed, they are going to reduce the payout from the endowment this coming year and the year following because of the 3-year rolling average issues and the issues of generational equity. We can't really reach into the principle of the endowment to continue the payouts at even the modest level that we have now. Nevertheless, with all this uncertainty, everybody else is facing this uncertainty too. Every other medical school, every other university has this level of uncertainty. And I think fortune favors the prepared and the brave. And we have already done a lot in terms of understanding our cash flow and where we put our dollars. And I think we've become more nimble. And I think we have a shot at actually gaining ground in this environment if we work together and we do the kind of collaborative things that I think are going to be absolutely required. So this academic year, the university launched a strategic planning process. The principles on which that was based are to build on past successes, not to reinvent the plan that they did in 2008, and to look forward to the 200th anniversary of Case Western Reserve, which occurs in 2026. You can see at the bottom of this slide, and I think at the bottom of the strategic plan thing here, there's a website for the university strategic plan. They've been pretty good at keeping it up after each meeting, and you can look there and see what's going on with the university strategic planning process. They have 5 working groups, and you see them here, and I've put in red the names of the chairs of the working groups that are from the School of Medicine. So we do have a significant amount of input into this strategic planning process, and I would encourage you to look at the website and also to put your input into these strategic planning groups. We have a number of members on these planning groups. If you can't get a hold of the chairs, or if there's no chair from the School of Medicine and you don't want to talk to the other guys, here are our members from the strategic planning group. They are on the website. Your input is welcome. Now, the strategic planning process for the university is on a fairly rapid timeline because the goal is to present it to the Board of Trustees at their spring meeting, which is usually around the 1st of June. So, you know, these guys are galloping along, so don't wait too long to give your input, because they're at the point of writing and getting their recommendations. So this is now or never is the time to give your input. So as you know, we are starting this process now. It's one of the reasons you're here for this town hall meeting. We have created a website for our strategic planning process, which is at the bottom here. We have established working groups. The faculty council has worked collaboratively to populate these working groups with faculty. Dr. Kobanuglu and his steering committee have conducted elections, and a little over half of the faculty on each working group have been elected. The others have been appointed by my office, and I tried to fill in the areas that elections sometimes tilt toward one group or another. So if there weren't enough clinicians, I tried to put clinicians on, and if there weren't enough junior faculty, I tried to put some junior faculty on. So that's what we wound up with. The population of those planning groups is on the back of this page, and you can, those ad hoc working groups, and you can see who's on them, and you can talk to your very favorite person on that group and try to bring forward your ideas. These are the chairs of the working group. There's one from the elected population and one from the appointed population in each, for each working group, and we are planning on doing our strategic plan surrounding community, education, research, and people. And I think these are going to be very fruitful areas for our activities in the next 5-year period. We are looking toward innovative medical and graduate education. We're hoping that the education and the research working groups help us with that. We want to enhance our research environment and make collaborative research easier. We want to continue our community health engagement and reach out both into the community and across the university. And we want an enhanced climate for the faculty. The School of Medicine strategic plan, the website's at the bottom of these lists. We are going to try assiduously to keep up with the meetings of the working groups on those and post them on the website so you can see them. And please participate. So that has been the rapid tour through, yes, the strategic planning process mattered in 2008 because we pretty much did what we said we were going to do in this strategic plan, even in the face of, shall we say, severely restricted finances. So it does matter. It will matter this time. Please participate. Second, we now have a great group of people elected and appointed together to put the plan together. I will be talking with the chairs of these these groups, and I will be posing to them questions that Barbara Snyder posed to our Board of Trustees, the lead of which is, what would success look like in 5 years? So we're going to challenge these groups to do a great job for us. I'd be happy to take questions or discussion or whatever. I talk too much like the FedEx man?
Is there a time frame when the various working groups are going to get some kind of marching orders to begin meeting?
Yeah, as soon as we can get them together. You know this is academia, and getting 15 people together at the same time for any purpose in anything is challenging. Where, you know, so, but as soon as possible, we're going to get them going. We do not have to be done by the 1st of June. The idea is to dovetail with the university's plan. We'll know more about the university's plan in a little bit. I believe there is a retreat in the middle of March, towards the end of March, 18th, I think. So we'll hear more about the strategic planning process across the university then, which I think will help inform what we do. My goal is that in the fall, in the fall, that our strategic planning process will be pretty well completed and we'll be back. We will, I think each of the working groups is planning a town hall meeting, and so there will be an opportunity for a broader discussion and input. And they are always ready to receive commentary by email or personal buttonholing in the hallway. Yeah?
So I have a question about mentoring the new generation of scientists. I think it's a very important issue. And until today, I think it has borders, which is the department. Unless we come outside of the borders of the department, we're not going to see progress. Well, so are there plans?
I think you're, as I pointed out at the start, that's one of the things that I heard when I went around to the departments from more than one department. You didn't get on that list of common themes unless I heard it from at least 3 different, in the meetings from at least 3 different departments. I think you're absolutely right, and I think cross-cutting mentoring is very important. We have an extraordinarily successful KL2 program out of the CTSA program, and Robert's nodding because he's on with a multidisciplinary committee that helps supervise it, and Cliff knows about it as well from his contact with the MD Ph.D. part of that program. That committee requires at least 2 mentors for their mentees, one a career mentor and one a research mentor. They also want the mentors to be cross-disciplinary, preferably cross-institutional, but at least cross-disciplinary, so that the mentoring is formally done across a program like that. That program, since its inception, has a more than 70% K to R conversion rate. The NIH K to R conversion rate is under 25%. So something that these guys are doing, they're doing right. And I think part of it is the very formalized, stylized, supervised mentoring program, because the multidisciplinary committee looks at the mentoring programs, the mentoring reports that happen every 6 months. So you got to do it, and you got to engage, and you got to go cross-disciplinary. That program also has formal courses in leadership and in team building. And whether that has something to do with the success, I don't know. But I can tell you that 2 of the mentees, one of them in our cardiovascular division and one of them in our dermatology group, got together, proposed a UO1 application, and got funded. You know, they didn't know each other until they were in this program, met cross-disciplinary, had some good ideas, and they were off. So we got to figure out better ways to do that. In pediatrics, there's a program now that's in pilot form on peer mentoring. So we're going to look at and see what happens there. It's facilitated. You have a facilitator there. But the mentoring comes from among junior faculty. And I think that that's helpful in some ways because it helps to dispel the myths. And you're more willing to say the myths in a group of your peers than you are to a superior. So, you know, I think that that is going to be, we'll just see how it works. We have to do some experimental things and work on that. But I think you're right, and I did hear that was a note that was sounded in more than one of our department meetings. Yes, ma'am. Clara.
You mentioned growth in the area of informatics. Do you have any information on that?
Oh, anybody got a four-leaf clover, wood to knock, whatever? We are in the advanced negotiations with someone whose sweet spot is computational biology, bioinformatics. His particular area is genomics, but his vision is much broader than that. We are in the final stages of negotiation with that being supported by the three major institutions in town, the Cleveland Clinic, University Hospitals, and Case Western Reserve. So this may turn out to be another high-level collaborative program that could benefit many of us. There are plans for not only the individual research activity in these areas, but also pretty robust core activities in those areas that will be supported not only by the school, but also by our partners at university hospitals and our partners at the Cleveland Clinic. I think this is something that we have needed, and computational biology is going to be a spectacular growth area. Now, in the School of Engineering, and I'm grateful to Jeff for being here, they hired someone in imaging who was basically a computational biologist. And they broke out of their pattern in their cluster hires of hiring a full professor. They hired an associate professor. Heaven forfend. The guy probably has three large grants already, and he only came in September. So you can see that the computational piece and the mathematical piece of things is going to be absolutely essential. I don't know much about the BRAIN initiative, but I think that if you're going to plot the brain, you're going to need a lot of computational biology and simultaneous equations and understanding mathematically how impulses move across the brain. I think this is going to be terrific. In addition, we are in the final stages of negotiation with a chair of genetics. And Richard Hansen, I think, has been the biggest catalyst for that because he was an MD, Ph.D. out of Richard's lab. And you know, he's happy with the medical school piece of it. I just have to get the UH piece of it on the table, and we're almost there. And you know, this is going to be a great thing because that's going to build a lot of the genomics piece of it. And the computational biology and genetics are being built in close collaboration with one another. Both of these guys are strongly collaborative. So I don't want to jinx it, but God, it'd be great. Pardon me?
Also the recruit we offer GQ in informatics.
Yeah, and Jeff is correct. In the department, in the School of Engineering, they are doing cluster hires, and they only have a couple of slots left, but one of them is going to be devoted to informatics. And GQ Zhang, who has been working both in the School of Engineering and in the School of Medicine on informatics, is going to drive that recruit. So we're pretty jazzed about this. We think it is a wave of the future. We think it has multiple applications. We think a lot of our faculty will be able to benefit from this kind of infrastructure. Sorry, I got a little bit enthusiastic about that because it's really good. Other questions? Are you sure? Okay, well, I do have a couple of other things that I want to do. Some of you may recall the surprise announcement that President Snyder made in this very room last spring. After she and the provost had finished their regular campus update, Barbara told us that one of our own, Jim Anderson, had been named one of Case Western Reserve's distinguished university professors, and we were all very happy about that. Who knew? Less than a year later, we'd be here again for Jim Anderson. As many of you know, last month, Jim added another extraordinary distinction to his already impressive list. He won election to the National Academy of Engineering. Wow. Now, keep in mind, Jim has already been a member of the Institute of Medicine for a decade. He's also a member of the Association of American Physicians and the American Academy for the Advancement of Science. And by the way, last month we also learned that Jim has won the 2013 ACTA Biomaterials Gold Medal from the American Physical Society. So I was a little surprised that at the Oscars, we didn't see Jim up on stage with Seth MacFarlane getting something, but I figured he wanted to wait till Tina Fey was hosting it. Wait till next year. Kidding aside, Jim's election to the National Academy of Engineering underscores his stature, not only as a scientist, but also as someone who truly lives and breathes the ethos of interdisciplinary research. He understands the value of working across boundaries to develop solutions that best benefit patients, and he imparts this sensibility to colleagues and students alike. His legacy includes breakthroughs like the wireless drug delivery microchip highlighted around the world last February, and countless other innovations yet to be invented by those he mentored and inspired over the years. Jim, it's a privilege to have you on our faculty. Thank you for all that you do. Congratulations. So we want to claim you as Case Western Reserve, whether you're at work or at play. So if you're at work or at some special dinner, we want you wearing the old school tie. And if you're at play...
When's the last time you saw me in a tie?
I believe we're going to see you on Saturday night when we get Cliff into the AAP. All right. And when you're at play, maybe you would wear the Case ball cap, because we want to be sure everybody knows you're ours.
Thank you very
okay?
much. Thank you very much. As I told one of my colleagues, here on the faculty said, what are you doing in the National Academy of Engineering? You're not an engineer. And I said, when I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express. Let me add one other thing. I'm probably the best example that if you fall down, you get yourself back up and you keep on moving. I flunked out of the chemical engineering program at the University of Wisconsin my junior year as an undergraduate. You don't stop moving forward. Thank you.
We're really proud of them. And now I have the honor of introducing a special presentation by our own Richard Hansen. If you remember, at the State of the School, I awarded Distinguished Lifetime Achievement Awards to both Richard and Fritz Rotman. And Richard was unable to attend at that time, but he told me he wanted to come back and do a little presentation on life with Fritz. Richard, can I get...
It's great to see Jim Anderson receive this wonderful tribute, which he really deserves. And I can't say enough about Jim. He's been a wonderful, wonderful colleague and a stalwart at this university. And to see him receive these awards, I think is very appropriate. Jim, you deserve every bit of it. I'm glad I'm here today to see it. You have to excuse this patch over my eye. I'm actually auditioning for
Pirates of the Caribbean, yes.
Johnny Depp's father in Pirates of the Caribbean 4. You know, I don't recommend it, I can tell you, wearing this. It's just part of a treatment I'm getting. Actually, I'm seeing double, which is a little bit disconcerting. You'd all be avatars here. Is there enough? You want to sit here? I hate to see everybody. Is there room here? There is. There's a seat at least here. Someone take it. I hate to see everybody standing there. Okay. I am very honored to be asked to make remarks this morning for my good friend Fritz Rotman. Fritz and I were connected at the hip for many years here at Case Western, and I know of no one, I say no one, that I believe has contributed more to this institution than Fritz, and I would say that, I think, and no one who knew him would disagree. And winning a Lifetime Achievement Award from the school was an honor for me, but especially winning it with Fritz. And I think this was a particularly insightful decision by the dean and others, because we did actually work together in a way that I think was important for the development of the institution in our era. And let me try and develop that story. Let me say a word about Fritz. As I think you know, he died last Saturday of complications related to leukemia, which he had. And I'll mention his health because he had to bear up over his life with a number of health issues, and he did it with a grace that I think was remarkable. Fritz was a very kind and generous man. I would say that if you knew him, this is one of the things that struck you. He is the best sense was what I would call a good man, whose very life and his everyday behavior accounted for the deep respect that we all hold in his memory. And as the poet William Wordsworth said, the best portion of a good man's life are his little, nameless, unremembered acts of kindness and love. I don't think you could say it better. I don't have to tell you that. Those of you who knew him knew his character, knew his personality. What I would like to do, however, is to set the scene when both Fritz and I arrived at Case Western Reserve School of Medicine. I came in '78, he came in 1981. In this case, I think the context is important for the evaluation of the man. He lived in an era, and all that he did is related to the events around him. And in many ways, his career and mine are intertwined in time and place. And in the time I have available to me this morning, I'd like to try and place all this in context. Case Western Reserve in the 1970s. The university found itself deeply involved in the protest against the Vietnam War. The shootings at Kent State had occurred in May of 1970, and the university was not immune from the fallout and the general anti-war sentiment on campuses throughout the country. Benjamin Spock was here. He was professor of pediatrics at the School of Medicine from 1955 to 1967, and he was a national leader in the protest movement against the war. He'd written a book, which I think many of us have used or was raised on, called Dr. Spock's Common Sense Book of Baby and Child Care. I remember we used it a lot with our own children, and I would suspect a lot of you here, your parents used it also. I thought it was codified common sense, actually, how you deal with babies that cry and many things that were practical and I thought useful. He sold 50 million copies of the book, and I think it's still it's still being published. Over this period, he commented that he felt an obligation to the children of families that his book influenced. as they faced the vicissitudes of the war at that time. And I mentioned this part of our history since the School of Medicine was heavily influenced by the social changes that were occurring in Cleveland and the country in general. And for this reason, biomedical science was not in the front burner at the time. And the investment by our institution in basic and clinical science at that time, I don't think was adequate. The School of Medicine was living at that time largely on its reputation as an innovative teaching of medical students, and the careers of the distinguished faculty members who were still active at the institution in the 70s. I was recruited as chair of the Department of Biochemistry in 1977, and at that time, let me just show you this picture of Fritz, taken in 1980. I want to get back to this because this was taken at the school, and it's really a typical picture of this wonderful man, and I'm going to get back to this. And I quoted this wonderful comment of William Wadsworth, and I think this is true. The little nameless and unremembered acts of kindness and love, and this is so important. He didn't do things because he thought there was a reward for it. He did them because it was in his character, and I think this is what separates him from many people that I know. I came here for a reason. I came here because of the quality of the faculty here, and this was a very important thing. At the time I came, the infrastructure itself looked something like this. Let me show you, and I'll come back to the people. Here's the institution. If you take a look at it, you can see, for example, many of the research buildings, like the one we're sitting in now, wasn't there. Most of the research was done in the Wood, what's now the Wood Building, and that time it was the West Wing of the medical school, and now what's the Robbins Building, which then was the East Wing of the medical school. UH had a research building which was devoted largely to clinical research, and that was it, basically, for the School of Medicine. The school itself was built in, I think, a rather attractive building, but it was placed not parallel to a Delbert, but at an angle. I spent a time talking about the history of the School of Medicine, trying to explain why that occurred. It's very interesting, actually. The school at the time, when I came, you could park in front of it, which was quite a, as you can see, you could park in front of it and walk in. It was quite interesting. But as you'll note from these, that the building had air conditioners in the window. Let me get back to this. Air conditioners in the window. And this was a decision made back in the 60s when air conditioning became an important adjunct to our research, not to centrally air condition, but to put these in the windows. And I know Danny is here, Davis, had to pick up on this. But it caused a lot of problems. Anyway, the Remington company that built the air conditioners went out of business. That was one thing. So they were always scavenging parts from one air conditioner to another. And the air conditioner stuck in the windows, which was not a very sightly thing. So I remember sitting in the office when I was being interviewed. I remember sitting in the office of a member of the faculty of the Department of Microbiology then. And at that point, it was in the winter. This was 1977. And the wind was blowing through what was the rotting bottom of the wood of his window. And he looked at me and he said, and I had noticed this too, he looked at me and he said, "Why would you ever want to come here?" I thought it was a recruiting ploy. But I thought about the question in some detail. Why would I want to come here? What was there about Case Western Reserve? It was not because of the weather in Cleveland. It was not because of the fact the city had just defaulted on its bonds and the river had been burning, or the beauty of the campus and its buildings, and certainly not the fiscal financial package that was offered to me. This was the day before free agency, and there was no such thing as a fiscal package. I came here for one reason and one reason alone, and let me tell you what it was. It was the quality of the people who were here, period. I knew Harlan Wood. Who could not? If you were in biochemistry, as I was, you knew the great Harlan Wood. I called him the Great One. He was one of the people who I believe influenced this institution in a seminal way. Naming the Wood Building after him was a just thing to do, in my view. He was remarkable. In all my years in science, I have never met anyone who was a scientist of the caliber of Harlan Wood. And I think people in the room who knew Harlan would not argue this point. I also knew that Mert Nutter was here. Mert, my discovered pep carboxykinase. I knew him. I knew he was here. Leonard Skaggs first developed the autoanalyzer. Became a multimillionaire because of it. All those SMAC tests we do starts with Leonard. Department of Biochemistry, Veterans Administration. I knew these people. Of course, I knew that cyclic AMP had been discovered in the Department of Pharmacology years before. Earl Sutherland and Ted Roll had been here. So I was influenced to come here by the quality of the people, by nothing else. And I think this is an important point for us to remember today. It's a lesson for us. Without a dedicated commitment of our faculty to our institution, everything fails. Without you, without me, nothing in this institution will be important. It's just buildings, it's just bricks. And people like Fritz Rotman, of course, are influence this and make sure that we have here the kind of people that influence us to come. And I think this continues. Pam was mentioning that new chair of genetics, I think I can say his name, Tony Winchell Boris, who was a student of mine, is looking at, I know he bought a house on Berkshire Road, so I know he's committed. He told me that. Something has to work out. Actually, it's right across the street from where I had my house, so it's very, very interesting. I don't know. But he too was influenced by this, by the fact that here were people that he respected. And I think there's nothing like that. It's us, the quality of the faculty, that means everything. And I don't have to tell you that. I'm sure you would agree with me. And after I arrived at Case Western Reserve, I noted another important quality of our medical school. Two of them I want to talk about. That later was very helpful to me, because I was involved in a lot of search committees, including one for Fritz, in bringing new people to the school. The first one was, I found that the chairs, now here I was chairman of the Department of Biochemistry, that the chairs had direct access to the dean. The power structure was very lean. And I had come from Temple School of Medicine, where there was this infrastructure of layers of people atop of leadership. And what struck me so much here was that my opinion would be heard as a chairman. I didn't expect people to do what I said or follow through on my opinions, but to listen to what I said and to listen what my colleagues said. And I thought that this was, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that we would have that kind of access to our leadership. We didn't have to navigate through a bureaucratic sort of structure to say to our leadership what we thought we should be done. And I think often they our deans listened. And I think it was a moment, a seminal moment in developing the institution. I was secondly very impressed about something else that I want to tell you, and I often mention this. And that is the number of physicians who taught in the basic science portion of our curriculum. I couldn't believe it. And I'll tell you that the number, 50% roughly, of the basic science lectures in the first 2 years of the curriculum back in the day were taught by physicians, real doctors. And I was really impressed, because if you teach medical students something like biochemistry, you know that there's nothing like having a real doctor come into the room, particularly if he or she has a patient, to describe a biochemical or whatever basic science event related to a disease that the students will later see. And to have this occur at this level, with this commitment, at this institution, in my mind, was remarkable. And I think that this, I couldn't believe it, because where I came from in the past, it was very difficult to get a doctor, for lots of reasons, they're involved in their own work, to do this. And to this day, I remember this and thought that it was probably one of the single most important reasons that our curriculum was so well, that our students liked it here. And when alumni come back, they always say that. The dean of the School of Medicine at the time was this man, Fred Robbins. Fred was a winner of a Nobel Prize, you know, the polio vaccine, I think you all know. He was a fantastic person. If anybody knew Fred, you would know that he was a legend, a real legend in many ways. And I have the deepest respect for Fred Robbins. To do what he did, and to be so modest, and to be yet to be an effective leader, and an inspiration for us, I must say, forever hones him in my memory as a person of great stature. And I would say Fred it's his handwriting there. He was committed to rebuilding the basic sciences in the institution. And he started by naming Les Webster's, Les here today? Les Webster, as chairman of pharmacology. Each department, and this is a point I'd like to make about all institutions, they're never a straight line. What's great in one generation can fade in the next. And that is why I think we must always be vigilant to reinforcing what's here. Nothing lasts forever. Nothing in life lasts forever. And we must commit ourselves to regeneration of the who's creative in one part of your career doesn't mean you're going to be creative later. And I think there are very few people like Harlan Wood who had 9 posters at the ASBMD meeting and 3 or 4 manuscripts at the Journal of Biological Chemistry and 3 grants on the day he died at the age of 86. This is like, people say, be like Harlan to me. What? No one could be like Harlan. He was in a league by himself. And I think but in general, I think, with time, things change, and I think institutions change. And Fred committed himself at that point to rebuilding the basic sciences for reasons we talked about. Les Webster chaired the committee that brought me to Case Western Reserve. I was not the first pick, believe me. There were many others. I think I was way down the list. In fact, I know I was, probably for good reason. So when I got here and took the job, I in turn was chair of the committee to pick a new chairman for the department of what was then called microbiology. Now, in surveying the scientific needs of the institution, it was clear, even to a man with a patch over one of his eyes, that we lacked expertise in molecular biology and molecular genetics. There was really very little eukaryotic molecular biology in the late 1970s when it was the revolution going on in medicine. We had good metabolism, we had some good endocrinology, that type of thing. Bernie Landau was here in the School of Medicine. We had endocrinology. But this new area, which I think we'd all admit has revolutionized the biological sciences, was absent from the school. And so one of the things I felt, and I think we all felt at the time in our planning, that we had to do was to build this area. And you don't need to be a rocket scientist to understand why that had to occur, and that's exactly what we started to do. So what is search for a chair, I never forget this point, search for a chair. We brought in a person, Bill, remember this, brought in a person who was a player in the field, he was a player in the field, and he looked over the position for 2 days. And at the end, he went to the dean, and he told the dean this. He said, this school will never succeed in molecular biology. That's what he said. I mean, it was like, what? I mean, at least he had his mouth shut if he didn't want to take the job. He went to the dean and he said, this school is never going to succeed in the area of molecular biology. And in fact, the man that Richard Hansen hired, that was Jonathan Leese, who was a molecular biologist, who succeeded quite well, said, we'll never succeed here either. It was like, whoa, what a depressing first visit. And I can remember that because the dean came to me and he said, I told that guy something, you know. So he stuck up for us, which I thought was very, very important. However, from all of this was a very fortunate happened. I happened to turn to Fritz Rotman. Now, I knew Fritz from our days on the biochemistry study section, and I think he was an ideal candidate for the job in many, many ways. He had isolated the gene for bovine growth hormone, not a shabby thing in the mid-70s. He was steeped in molecular biology and molecular genetics, just what we needed. And he was also working on the regulation of gene expression for this gene. He collaborated with the Upjohn Company, I want to come back to this, in trying to commercialize this because it became an important part of Fritz's legacy here. Most important, he had the personal qualities that I've been talking about. We came to respect so much for his sincerity. Fritz had soul. He had soul in the best sense of that word. And that was apparent from the very beginning. All you had to do was meet him. And I knew this from our study section days. You know, when you're in a room and you have a chance to evaluate other people's work, and when you have some power over other people, it's the way you act then, when nobody's watching, when nobody knows what you're doing, when no one's going to criticize, that really tell your character. And it was then that I think that I saw Fritz in action. He was generous to a fault, never critical in an ungentlemanly way, and I want to get to that. An event occurred during the recruitment period, I think, that spoke volumes about the man and how he dealt with the unavoidable tragedies that we all face in life. You never go through life without something occurring. Fritz had accepted the position of chair in the summer of but in the position as chair of the NSTU department. But in the summer of 1980, I can remember this to this day, I received a phone call from Fritz in which he informed me that his son, Doug, his only son, had a water skiing accident and had severed his spinal cord, and that he was, if he survived surgery, and that was an if, he would be a quadriplegic. Now, how do you deal with that? The only thing I could think worse than that is to find out the death of a child. But this rates right up there with a tragedy that I think is hard to fully understand or to be able to deal with. He himself suffered his whole life with polycystic kidney disease, which required a kidney transplant about a decade or so ago. This would haunt him to the end of his life, actually. One of the reasons you see him here quite lean in these pictures is he was very careful about what he ate. He would not eat too much protein. He was always looking at his creatinine levels because of his kidney. You know, this was an issue with Fritz. He had to deal with this. But he never complained. You never heard him complain that he was eating carrots instead of a steak. I'll get back to his carrots a little while. And in 1990s, he developed prostate cancer, which he had to deal with. So he had his share of problems. Later in his life, Carol told me, and I met him a year or so ago, that he had dementia coming on and then later cancer. So he had a number of health issues that would knock any of us, would put any of us out of business. But Fritz had a really wonderful, wonderful character. And I would use this quotation mark from Seneca, the Roman Stoic philosopher: to be always fortunate, to pass through life with a soul that has never known sorrow, is to be ignorant of one half of nature. Things never always go right. And Fritz, I think, because of his deep Christian faith, and he was a real Christian in the sense that he had inner resources, and he dealt with these and other tragedies that occurred in his life in a way that I think was extremely admirable, and one I don't know if I could do the way he did. He inherited the leadership of a department that was in dire need of rebuilding. As an example, his department had a graduate program with only one graduate student. Remember, you were here and you remember that. From the start, it was apparent for him to succeed here, and if he didn't succeed, we wouldn't succeed. It would require an institutional commitment, but more than money. I was eternally grateful to the faculty of the Department of Biochemistry for agreeing to combine our graduate program with that of the new department, what was called molecular and microbiology. Our department did not object to the fact that he wanted the term molecular biology in his department. Now, I know many schools where this was a battle, who had the word molecular biology in their name. We didn't do that. And I thought, again, this was an attitude among our faculty which allowed this development to occur and allowed Fritz to succeed. Our view was, so we combined our graduate education program, and I think this arrangement eventually led to a totally integrated graduate program in the biological sciences at our university. In my view, I feel it then and I feel it now, there's no advantage to having one strong department in the School of Medicine at the expense of all the others. The school should be developed in a way where prosperity goes across the board, and this has been my view and was the view of my colleagues when I when we worked together. We continued the tradition, Fritz and I, when Tony Mahowald became chairman of the Department of Developmental Biology and Genetics. Fritz and I turned over to Tony a well-funded program that we had jointly run so that he could build his department. Now, I don't say this for some kind of bookish sentiment that you think we were great. It just was required to run the place in those days. And as I look back at the period, working with Fritz, with Tony, with Les Webster and Mike Lamb, was for me a golden era. It was one that I cherish and I won't forget. Here's a picture of Fritz and I. Fritz, this is at the Reinberger Laboratories. Fritz had an in with the Reinberger brothers. I'm not quite sure how that developed, but they really liked Fritz. And I can remember, this is brothers who were into technology and technology innovation. And he was able to, or he was a catalyst in this. I was a bystander, actually, and cheered him on, to get these laboratories built on the 5th floor of the Wood Building, which was then the West Wing, in which we had common services. Bill will remember, because he was involved in organizing some of it, in which we offered molecular biology like DNA sequencing. That was the day when, and other important protein sequencing and that type of thing in this. We had a philosophy that I like. Vlasic Havel said it this way: the more we did, the more we were able to do. And the more we were able to do, the more we did. And I think this reflected the attitude we had working together. That if we worked together, the more we did, the more we were able to do. And the secret of this was we had each other's back at a time when it was critical that programs be developed together, because, after all, where's Cleveland? We're rusting on a lake, right? This is not Boston. This is not San Francisco. This is not a place people want to come. This is a place they come for the reason I came. You don't come for the weather. You don't come for the... Actually, I'm glad they don't come, because you can still drive here, and you don't... Go to Seattle. You see what I mean. You can't get around. But I think this is really true, that what attracts people here is the way we interact with each other, the way we structure and the way we deal with each other. And I think we felt that way. And I think that whatever we accomplished in that period, any impact we had on the institution, as modest it may have been, was due to our ability to work together. And I think we did have each other's backs in that era. And it reinforced for me the importance of friendships. And I want to say this, and I think there's nothing really has changed in the distant times. When the medieval poets, and this is a translation I love by Mark Halliday, because it says it really right. Be true to your friends. The night will come when you wish for a friend close by, when the road is dark and dusty, and something moves among the shadowy trees. How important were you back? When the wolf finds you alone, it will not consider how important you were back in the town. That's for sure. In this dark world, gray wolves are forever hungry, and they show no mercy. That was written in the 800s and beautifully translated by Mark Halliday. This is a really wonderful collection of poems from the Anglo-Saxon poets. This was not the Dark Ages, totally. And I think this reflects, to this day, you can put wolves where you like them, but it does say the importance of friends, people you work with, people you care for, and people you are committed together with to do something collectively for the good of the institution. Now, I sound like a Boy Scout, I know saying this, but I can tell you this is the only thing that counts. Fritz made an important discovery in his research that resulted in a valuable patent to Case Western Reserve University. This is very interesting. I remember it well because its ultimate fate was not clear as we now view it. He was a longtime consultant for the Upjohn Company and had the goal, the company that had the goal of commercializing bovine growth hormone for expression in cows for milk production. And in time, the company decided against pursuing the program and gave the patent rights to Fritz. They gave it to Fritz. Now, that's a mixed blessing when somebody gives you patent rights, because you've got the patent, but you got to protect it, which is thousands of dollars. And I can remember Fritz coming back, because we were very involved in this at the time. And we were sitting and talking, should we raise money? Should we get them out of our bank accounts? This is the way we're looking at it. Because the university at that time, and those of you who go back that far know, they were risk avoidant. Note the Dalcon shield. They were risk avoidant in those days. And universities change, obviously. And ultimately, and it's a hit story this that someone should write, ultimately the university, after some arm twisting, decided that they would support this patent. And luckily they did, because it turned out that the 3' end of the bovine growth hormone gene, when linked to a cDNA, enhances the expression, and not only that, the half-life of the protein. You say, so what? Well, every company that expresses a protein now in cells, in culture, use this piece of DNA, and they pay to our school. Dr. Davis will agree with that. It pays to our, up until last year, pays to our school a royalty. And I can't say how many $1 million came into the school, because I don't know, I'm not privy to that. But it was substantial. And it was one of the great legacies that Fritz left. From his research, I can say that it was a lasting legacy. So what did he do? How did he use his share of the proceedings? Let me just say, of the proceeds. It was typical of the man. He was deeply committed to Christian values. I keep saying that because as a non-believer myself, I'm always impressed with this belief that runs so deep in people like Fritz, who believe that there is something beyond what we have here and that this world is not the end of it. And this is the way he felt, and I think it strengthened him through his life as he approached what he knew would be the end, and his family approached that. After retirement, he spent a number of months each year in Africa, and he supported ventures to improve the lives of the people in Kenya and Uganda. This was typical of Fritz. He promoted beekeeping as a commercial venture among rural farmers. Great idea. Fritz was a farmer at heart. I think if anything, he should have been a farmer, to tell you the truth. He would have tomatoes in his lunch bag before my plants were even in the ground. I used to say to Fritz, where did you get those tomatoes? You know, he was marvelous. He had a green thumb. Everything seemed to grow for him. I am sure that if the grocery stores were to close, he'd grow enough food to support his family and probably many others. He was a real farmer. This piece of land he had out there in the suburbs of Cleveland, you go out there, everything was growing. He was marvelous at it. His family in retirement had 70 acres of land on the edge of Flatiron Lake in Michigan, where he worked to restore 17 acres of prairie grass to improve the environment. Fritz was a wonderful photographer, and for a book written by his wife, Carol, what did I do here? A book written by his wife, Carol, he took all the pictures. It's a lovely book. They gave it to me last year. It's called All Nature Sings, A Spiritual Journey of Place. And it's photographs of this wonderful 70-acre piece of land they have in Michigan that they were working on. It's absolutely gorgeous, and Fritz's pictures are unbelievable. There's so much I could say about Fritz. He lived a long and fruitful life, full of love and caring for others. He understood the wisdom of Emerson's admonition that the reward of a thing well done is to have done it. In all my dealings with Fritz, through almost 2 decades as a colleague in this university, I never heard him say an unkind word about anyone. It was just not in his character. This kindness to others is one of the reasons that we loved him so. In the end, we're all measured by the small contributions our lives make to those around us. He could say, as did St. Paul, I fought the good fight, I finished the course, I've kept the faith. And my career has been linked with his over the decades that we worked together to school. I mentioned that. For all the reasons I have stated in this presentation, he was a partner to me, and in fact to all of us at the institution, in building a better framework for our academic mission. He, like me, would only hope that in some small way it will endure the changes with time that always occur. Least one good custom corrupt the world. To my memory, to his memory rather, so fresh in my mind, I would say, as Horatio to Hamlet, good night, sweet prince. May bands of angels sing thee to thy rest. If you want to contact Carol. Here's her address. Here's her email number. I'm sure she would love to hear from you. Thank you for listening. It was an honor for me to be able to eulogize my friend Fritz Rotman. Thank you all very much.
So Richard, when we delivered those Lifetime Achievement Awards last fall, Lindsay Hugenboom, our second-year medical student, was there to receive one on behalf of her grandfather, Fritz Rotman. But you never received yours. Here it is.
Oh, thank you very much.
We'll send it to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And I have one other small thing for you.
Oh,
Cleveland ain't so bad.
yeah, that's right. That's right.
This is a signed ball by Asdrubal Cabrera.
Oh, my God.
Which I think is your favorite player.
Oh, isn't that wonderful? Thank you very much. Wonderful. My grandson will go crazy over this. Lisa, thank you very much. Somebody knows a Struble. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So we thank you.
Thank you so much.
There is a reception outside in honor of Jim Anderson's election to the National Academy of Engineering. And in honor of Richard's talk here, we had one in honor of you and Fritz in October, but we gave a ball and you didn't come.
I'm sorry.
So
I was ill. I would have.
So we're delighted. Please join us outside for a reception in honor of our terrific faculty. Thank you.